Hey Spuds, it's Jamie. Welcome back to another video of Fast Channel. I don't know, but welcome either way. I'm very glad to have you here for what should be the first, a type of video that should never happen, but is the, I don't know, second or third one of these I'm making, where I'm reading and reacting to a very bizarre blog post, article thing that somebody has written about me. It's not a news thing, it's somebody's personal blog, I believe. I cannot remember how I came across this. I was doing research for a video, which involved Googling myself, which sounds very bizarre. Don't enjoy doing that. And I just saw the headline of this as the little Google link thing, and I was like, what the heck is this? Let me have a look. So I clicked on it, and then I screen recorded it so I didn't have to ever click on it again. And yeah, it's very interesting. Very interesting. And so I thought, what a fun little activity for us friends to do together is read it. Yes, I have skimmed through it, so I know it's bizarre, but reading word for word, you and me gonna do that right now together. Yeah, can't wait. Oh my god. Yay. So this thing is called The Anxious Story of the Transgender Celebrity Jamie Rains. No, I find that very cringy. The Anxious Story, right? My first assumption is, oh my god, this is a TERF that thinks I'm trans because I'm also anxious. The horror. No, you cannot possibly be trans and have anything else going on. If you have anything else going on, that's what caused the transness. Anyway, I wholly reject being called a transgender celebrity. No thank you. Okay, should we have a look at this? For context, I'm not showing who wrote it, and I would highly recommend to not go and seek this out. There's not anything more you can learn from it other than what I'm reading, but I'm gonna block out who wrote it, blah blah blah. But it was published October 2024, so it's really not that old. So if it's like mid-October, we're currently mid-March 25. October to November, November, December, December to January, February, February to March. 5 months ago. So it's pretty recent, I'd say, in the grand scheme of things on the internet. Right. Jamie Rains is a female to male. I feel like I'm being told off that someone is just like, Jamie Rains. I'm so used to online stuff just referring to me as Jammidodger that it's bizarre to see my name there. Jamie Rains is a female to male FTM, if you didn't know, transgender celebrity with more than 1.3 million followers combined on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. Quite proud of that. Thank you. Yes, really appreciate all the support. Oh my goodness. No, legit, I thought I wouldn't even get 1,000 subscribers. So the concept of where YouTube has gone for me is absolutely would not have believed you. I will refer to Jamie as... How am I even supposed to say that? Of course, I'm not going to verbally misgender myself. I am going to use he, him pronouns for myself throughout whilst reading, but you may see that not be reflected in the text. It's like they're kind of thinking, I will attempt to be respectful, but I can't possibly bring myself to just fully respect this other human being. Right, I will refer to Jamie as, in quotes, bracket S, bracket he. Maybe that's how I should say it. When speaking about Jamie in events happening before or early transitioning. Little learning moment or teaching moment, I don't know what you would call it. When talking about a trans person from before they transitioned, rule of thumb, use the pronouns they use now, unless an individual trans person has told you it's okay not to, or they would prefer you didn't for whatever reason they might have personally. But generally, when talking about trans people or a specific trans person who you don't know what their preference is, always use the pronouns they use now. So for me, it would just be whether you were talking about me now, 5 months ago, 20 years ago, he, him pronouns, please. Jamie paints a very happy and successful story of transition to his million followers. But what caused his gender dysphoria, and could it have been addressed without transitioning? No. Every major medical board approves the gender affirmative approach, which is the approach to allow trans people to transition socially and medically to alleviate gender dysphoria and live as their true gender. I have had a very happy and successful story personally. I feel very grateful and very privileged for the position I'm in terms of my transition. This is just very bizarre. I feel like they're going to try and diagnose me. We have a doctor, everybody, not just me. Jamie is 30 years old. Yes, I was at the time that this was written. He is married to Shaba Rains. Why does Shaba get our married name and I don't? We both changed the name. I'm Jamie Rains in my personal life. If you're going to do Shaba Rains but Jamie Rains, no, incorrect. Anyway, they put in brackets about Shaba, biological female. You know when someone says biological female in all seriousness and they're not like quoting somebody else, that's not a great sign for their views on trans people. What would have been a better term to use is Shaba Rains, cisgender woman, pronoun she. See, they can respect Shaba's pronoun, entirely. I will say they are using he, him pronouns for me in this beginning bit. He started transitioning 13 years ago when 17 years old and documented the transition on YouTube since the very start. Yes. Chronic fatigue syndrome and anxiety before transition. I am lost as to what this has to do with me being trans, but let me read on. Jamie has had anxiety since childhood. What is with the bracket? Just use my correct pronouns. Just full stop, okay? My parents do it, everybody else does it, I do it, you can do it. When he was a kid, he was terrified of dinosaurs for years and used to have nightmares about them and about a velociraptor opening his bedroom door. Oh look, they dropped the bracket. See, this one, you could have put the R in a bracket for that. I did. This is uncomfortable. I mean, this is one piece of information. Let's see how much they have gathered. But yeah, I don't remember the last time I shared that. They have got little references to videos where I apparently said this stuff. I will be able to tell you if it's incorrect about myself, seeing as it's me. Yes, I watched Jurassic Park quite young. And it was that kitchen scene where the velociraptor opens the door. I was really young at this point, right? My child brain thought the sensible thing to do is to therefore sleep with my bedroom door open, because then I wouldn't see the velociraptor turning the handle, which was to me the terrifying bit. Like, children can't logic sometimes, right? That doesn't make sense. But it did to, how old would I have been? It was before I moved house, which happened at 9. So pre-9 years old. He was obsessed with zombies, although they used to freak him out when he was a kid. Probably. I mean, aren't most kids freaked out by things like zombies? I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I probably shared it at some point in a video. I was obsessed with zombies. I am. Very much. It's my favourite genre of movie. I'm also partial to a zombie book, but my favourite genre is murder and thriller. Just if this person wanted any more facts for a future blog post, try and diagnose me with something else from that. At 11 years old, when he had food poisoning, chronic fatigue syndrome started. As he explains in 2022, I did not have food poisoning. I had a stomach bug that I just seemingly never recovered from when I was 11 until 16. It was a joyous time in my life. But yeah, not food poisoning. I would not have said food poisoning. Now I want to check the reference. It was the stomach bug. Oh, they've quoted me. Okay, I say, I was then diagnosed with CFS and ended up not going back to school properly until I was 16. It was the loneliest, darkest and toughest 5 years of my life. Very true. Horrible. I was pretty much constantly exhausted and nauseous. I'm acting a bit flippant about it because what I say here is very accurate and it's not a time of my life that I particularly enjoy talking about, but I have explored in therapy, so it's all good. It left me with anxiety, mostly centered around traveling, that I've been dealing with for the past 12 plus years, and in August, the anxiety flared up massively. I've since been experiencing anxiety in a way I don't remember experiencing it before. I couldn't eat much and I lost a lot of weight. Right. I had a little mental health period. Late summer 2022, I just was not in a great place due to personal circumstances. And yeah, I lost a lot of weight. I did. Sorry if you don't work in kilograms, but I was approaching 70 kilograms at the time and I'm 6'1". I think that's like I don't know what bottom end of healthy weight, healthy weight, I don't know. But I was about 70 kilograms and then I was quite unwell. I don't know what went on. I had a lot of therapy afterwards. I am so much better now. Yes, it's all fine. We're lovely. But I went down to about 57 kilograms in that time. I'm now back up to 73, so yay, go me. But yeah, it wasn't a fun time. And I'm curious as to why this person is talking about it. I mean, they're welcome to quote me like this. I shared it publicly, so cool. Jamie started the transition. The transition is used twice now. It's just giving me the vibe of like the surgery. Jamie started the transition during the second year of college. I did. He was attending a school where he hardly knew anybody. That is the wrong new. I was attending a very large college. I did know a reasonable number of people like in my classes, but the college was big enough that they could swap me classes and form and stuff between year 1 and year 2 so that I didn't have to keep coming out over and over again just to like acquaintances in classes and things like that. He says, and this is another quote, I rarely spoke or made eye contact with people or participated in class discussions ever. I was just a very quiet during the first year of college at 16 years old. I was a very quiet what? Sandwich? I don't know. Yeah, I did. I was very self-conscious about my voice, dealing with a lot of dysphoria feelings. In the second year of college, I was terrified. I spent most of the year feeling self-conscious and being very worried about what people were thinking of me and saying about me. But to be honest, I had felt that in my first year of college, but just for different reasons. I was just a very nervous, self-conscious person. Indeed. You know when you see some people and it's like they could do with a dose of self-awareness? I could really do with them taking some of mine, especially when I was a teenager. Yeah, so I'm finding it really interesting, like the quotes, and I'm curious where this is building up to. But yeah, all stuff I shared. Cool. Thank you. As far as I'm aware, I shared it. Jamie hated menstruation. What trans mask person doesn't? And in a video from 2024, claims to have emetophobia. Claims to have emetophobia. Fear of blood. Oh, my life would be so much easier if emetophobia were a fear of blood. I'm not saying that a fear of blood is a lovely thing to have, but I feel like a fear of blood would perhaps come up somewhat less in day-to-day life than emetophobia. Emetophobia is a fear or feeling or being sick, like nauseous type sick, a fear of other people feeling that way. It can manifest in a various different way for various different people. For me specifically, it's if I feel nauseous. If I could be sick without feeling it, I probably dislike it a regular amount, but it's the feeling. And if someone around me starts feeling unwell, it makes me stress. So like if I found out someone's had a stomach bug and I spent time with them, I'm like, why didn't you tell me? And I will have a bit of a panic. And it's really impacted my life a lot. And it stemmed from having chronic fatigue syndrome. Like I said, I had that stomach bug, and then it basically felt like that prolonged for the next 5 years. And so I had a lot of like measures in place in terms of eating and going out to try and make myself feel as not nauseous and panicky as possible. And then when I got better, the anxiety part of that continued, and I still had those measures in place, and it took a long time to relearn, and I am still doing that now, and it's still something that impacts my life, but significantly less than it used to. Like I did a book tour with Shaba across the United States last summer, and we were away for nearly 3 weeks, and the concept to 16-year-old to even like 25-year-old Jamie to do something like that would have been absolutely unfathomable. Like I'd have told you I will never ever do anything like that, like eating out every day, going on long road trips, having like a long haul flight and then a flight within a country that was quite long and then a really long haul flight back home. All of that would have just seemed impossible. So I'm really proud of the progress I've made. But yeah, emetophobia has impacted most my feelings around like traveling and leaving the house. I'm totally fine with like going out locally now and even like, a couple hours away or visiting friends and stuff. But when I'm going somewhere further that I've never been before, and particularly air travel, that's where I struggle the most. So yes, definitely not a fear of blood. Oh, and then the quote continues, anxiety and emetophobia have had a pretty big impact on my life. Indeed, they have. Yes. Again, lots of therapy. In 2 videos, referenced, dedicated to his anxiety, Jamie dates the start of the anxiety disorder back to age 14. It was a time of hormonal changes for Jamie because he started menstruation at 13 years old. He says, oh God, do I really share this much on the internet? I'm feeling very confronted right now with my own level of sharing. Interesting. They quoted me again. Anxiety really kicked in when I was around 14, and between that time and now, it's about 9 years now. Great sentence structure, Jamie. It's really held me back from doing a lot of things and made a lot of things. Okay, was that really a sentence I said? But if I'm talking about it kicked in when I was around 14, yeah, which was several years into when I was dealing with chronic fatigue syndrome, 14 is 17 years ago for me now. So me saying this was 8 years ago. Wow, time really does fly. You too will be older before you know it. And I think for me as well, when you take things that are so old, like there is nearly as long between me making this video and now as there was between me in that video and when my anxiety first started. I'm in a very different place in life with myself and with the anxiety as well. A lot better place, by the way. Anyway, so I'm talking about how it's really held me back from doing a lot of things, and they've gone, sure, like being a woman, for example. There it is. I was wondering where that was going to come in. I was like, how does this whole discussion relate to me being trans? So what they're saying, the fact that I have anxiety that stemmed from chronic fatigue syndrome, and that anxiety has held me back from doing a lot of things. One of those things was being a woman. See, the thing is, to be a woman, you need to be a woman, and I am not a woman. Anxiety or not, I'm just not a woman. He mentioned symptoms of panic attacks, agoraphobia, restlessness, etc. Restlessness. I don't know. I probably did have some form of like mild agoraphobia when I was a teenager. I don't know. Like in the height of things, I struggled to go to the corner shop. And panic attacks, yes. I've not had a panic attack in like the longest time. I feel like 8 years ago, panic attacks would have probably been like a steady thing in my life, whereas now they're just not. He explains, I just kind of avoided doing things and stopped doing things that I knew would make me feel anxious because I couldn't deal with that feeling, like dating with guys in college. That was outside the quote. That is a bit I didn't say. Oh God. Okay. Excuse me, person whose gender I do not know. I have anxiety over feeling sick. I do not have anxiety. Oh, the reach. Oh my God. Okay.
Jamie had chronic fatigue syndrome, and this made him anxious and develop emetophobia. Therefore, it made it difficult for him to be a woman and date guys in college.
Where? Like you could step across the entire fucking globe with that reach. What is that? No, that's not true. I did try dating a guy pre-transition and a girl. Hello, bisexual. I'm not going to get into detail because this person doesn't deserve it, and it's stuff that I want to keep for myself. According to Bem's theory on sexual orientation, the exotic becomes erotic, and unfamiliarity with the opposite sex gives rise to sexual arousal. I never learnt about Bem. Let me Google Bem's theory on sexual orientation.
A few moments later.
So it's called the EBE theory, and studies cited by Bem and additional research show that EBE theory is not supported by scientific evidence. I will read more about it, but I feel like that is all I need to know for now. Daryl Bem's exotic becomes erotic theory, which proposed developmental pathway for sexual orientation based on childhood gender nonconformity, has been widely discredited by the scientific community due to a lack of empirical support and methodological flaws. Wow, kind of sounds like rapid onset gender dysphoria. Not in theory, but in kind of this very bizarre theory related to LGBT plus people that has absolutely no credit, yet people still try to use it as a gotcha to LGBT plus people. So that's what this person has done. I will not pay attention to a theory that I can very quickly find evidence that discredits it. There were many psychological theories throughout the years that have been entirely discredited and do not have empirical evidence to support them. So yay. They've literally decided to use a pseudo-scientific theory that is methodologically flawed and has been debunked and discredited to talk about my sexual orientation. Right, yes. But for very anxious persons, the opposite can happen. Jamie spent the formative years of adolescence in social isolation, those years being the loneliest, darkest, and toughest 5 years of his life. He must have been terrified of boys and sex. Is anyone else finding this bizarre and uncomfortable? I pose a theory to you. I'm not saying this in any seriousness because this is a part of bullshit. But if I spent 5 years in social isolation during my formative adolescent years, would I not also be terrified of girls? Or is it the whole exotic, erotic thing? Because, oh no, like, ew. It's just bizarre. I do not think that this is a productive use of your time. It's a little bit weird. No, I was not terrified of boys or sex. You say referring to 11 to 16-year-old me. Very weird behavior. Anxiety during and after transitioning. Oh good, we're moving away from the pseudo-scientific theory of sexual orientation. Pile of shit. When was Bem's theory from? Okay, it's literally not supported by scientific evidence. I'm trying to work out when it's from. It seems to be like the mid-1990s, which does again point to it being the sexual orientation version of like rapid onset gender dysphoria type, like where, you know, rampant homophobia leads to these very bizarre theories, just as rampant transphobia now has led to some very bizarre theories in the 2020s. Anyway, anxiety during and after transitioning. Jamie seems shy and depressed in the first videos, talking slowly in a low voice. A year after taking testosterone, Jamie feels much more confident and says, I am not scared to talk to people anymore. Funny that when you have gender dysphoria and you are a trans masculine person and you want to be read as the man you are when you go out in public, for me, literally the one thing that would stop that from happening was my voice. So obviously, when my voice was something that I felt so incredibly dysphoric and uncomfortable with, because that is what led people to refer to me as a woman, I did talk in a lower voice than my natural voice. I talked more slowly because it's easier to talk deeper when you talk slowly. Now I don't give a shit. And then a year after taking testosterone, funnily enough, my voice dropped quite considerably. And yes, that meant that I wasn't scared to talk to people anymore because I didn't get misgendered anymore. Wow, what a wonderful, clear, sensible explanation. I know, right? I was not depressed in the first videos. Like, this is what's very bizarre to me when people online overstep based on what I share. yes, I have shared a lot about myself and my life over the years, but it is nowhere near everything. And it's quite a curated level of things. Some things I forget that I've shared. Obviously, it's been like, how long have I been creating for? Like 14 years nearly. But there is so much about me that I don't share online. And for somebody to pick at certain quotes and pluck them out of videos that are like 9 years apart sometimes or more, and then diagnose me with various different things is really weird behavior. Like that's mostly why I wanted to react to this, to just call out like, this is bizarre behavior. I don't think anybody has even seen this blog post. There's a little bit at the top where you can see reactions to it, and I think it's literally one person has shared or liked it or something. So I'm not trying to debunk what this person has said because it's spread far and wide. It's just, one, a bit of fun, because honestly this kind of stuff doesn't upset me, I just find it weird. But also two, like, it is really strange to do this and to think that you have an authority or an ability to diagnose somebody that you watch online, particularly in these ways, and particularly when they've shared about the diagnoses that they've actually received. They're like, no, it's actually this, and then this new thing I've diagnosed you with caused this other thing. Strange. Okay, so I was shy. You try being a shy teenager anyway, and then talking to a camera in your bedroom. Like, it's a bit weird. I'm very used to talking to a camera now. This is like talking to a friend. I know the camera is not my friend, but you know what I mean? That's the level of comfort I have with it. Did not have that back when I was 17. So yeah, I would have come across as very shy. I was not depressed though. Transition significantly decreased Jamie's gender anxiety dysphoria, but didn't resolve it completely. Neither his general anxiety. I don't have general anxiety. I have emetophobia. Like, okay, I have a very specific anxiety. My gender anxiety, so my gender dysphoria, no, like transition for very few people will completely eradicate gender dysphoria, because unfortunately where we're at in terms of like surgeries and like technology and science and everything, not everything can be solved through transitioning, but a lot can. And I often describe the dysphoria that I have now and have had since I had lower surgery back in 2018 is like a grain of sand compared to the entire beach that it used to be. So yeah, I will be open that it's not resolved completely, but I mean, that's a pretty good improvement. I'm very happy with that. I feel like I got my money's worth with transition. That's a joke, by the way, not something else for you to use to diagnose me with a random thing. In a video posted on March 2024, Jamie says, I'm a very socially anxious person who's very self-aware and self-conscious, so I feel like people pay more attention to me than they actually do. I'm very self-aware. Yeah, I mentioned that. It is definitely something that's got a lot better. I feel like it was bad when I was a teenager, and then in other ways. And like, I'm just quite shy. On Twitter, dead naming the social media platform, I do approve of that. On Twitter, Jamie mentions feeling anxious in different situations, like when sick or traveling. His travel anxiety is corroborated by his wife Shaba, who says that he hates traveling. Because it's corroborated by Shaba, it's all good, huh? He also expressed anxiety when asked about the end of his PhD and searching for a new job. Where's that from? See, if you reference stuff, you need to reference everything, because I don't think they're from the same video, because I wouldn't have said that in March 2024. I mean, yeah, who isn't a bit scared? Like, talk to any person coming up to graduating from whatever their final stage of uni might be and be like, hey, are you a little bit anxious about entering this new world of work and finding a job? Yes, I feel like a majority would be. So I don't really know what this has to do with anything. The common wisdom in transgender affirming culture is that gender dysphoria causes anxiety, depression, and transgenders feel anxious, depressed because they don't like their assigned gender role, cannot express their true gender. That is not a pleasing sentence in terms of structure. I mean, yes, increased gender dysphoria is linked to increased rates of anxiety and depression, and the gender affirmative approach to like hormones, socially transitioning, surgeries related to being trans show to time and time again reduce this gender dysphoria, reduce anxiety, reduce depression, and generally increase life satisfaction and overall well-being for trans people. That is why it is the approved medical approach for treating gender dysphoria and is accessible to trans people and should be accessible to trans people. I don't know why it's so difficult to understand. But detransitioners recognize that in many cases instead, depression and anxiety come first. They cause gender dysphoria, which positively feeds back to depression/anxiety. I mean, if you are not a professional in this area, I feel like if you're talking to people where transitioning has been the wrong thing, you are very likely going to get a different story to if you talk to the 99% of trans people where they don't detransition, they don't regret it. And I also feel like when talking about detransitioners saying this kind of thing, it's specifically from a certain type of detransitioner. Now, I cannot say for someone who's detransitioned that them having anxiety and depression did not lead to them having some other feelings over what could help with that anxiety and depression, and they were incorrect about that. But that's not my job to fix. That was their thing between them and their medical professionals, and for them to go in and speak their truth to those medical professionals, because that's how gender dysphoria is diagnosed. And what happened there is up to them. What I do know is that 99% of people who transition, have things like surgeries, take hormones, live their best trans lives, do not regret that. It's absolutely the right thing for them to do. It absolutely leads to reduced anxiety and depression and overall increased well-being. So to take the experience of some of the 1% who regret, it's very interesting that they have referenced everything I've said, apparently, or some of what they're claiming I've said, and the diagnoses based off of this. But this one does not have a reference. Where has this come from? And it's not up to the 99% where transitioning was the right thing to do to step in, to get involved in whatever's going on here. If you are dealing with anxiety and depression and you think that transitioning is going to solve that, but you don't have gender dysphoria, then that is something that you need to be open with to the medical professional that you are seeing, and is not the responsibility of the trans community to bear the burden of those mistakes. That's it. And to say that this experience of some of 1% actually is now how you are going to paint all people who transition is a very bizarre take, given the vast amount of research that shows that this is not the case, and shows that the gender affirmative approach is absolutely the correct approach. As I've said multiple times already in this video, that it greatly increases well-being. Anyway, 7 years after transition, Jamie was still a pessimistic nature. I was a pessimistic nature, although much less so. Shaba comments on his pessimism. Have you seen the movie Trolls, like where Poppy is like this happy little thing all the time and Branch is just this really pessimistic butthole? I know I say that Jamie is brunch kiss. Shaba has never said I'm a brunch kiss. I don't even know what that is. He's pessimistic, and the level of sort of insecurity and pessimism that he has had beforehand was so much more, so I'm glad he's a happier person. I am very curious where this was said. It's a quote, and they're talking 7 years after transition. I did a lot of growth in my 20s. 7 years after transition, I was 24. I was still very much growing as a person. And the interesting thing is, Shaba is, and will admit, she can be quite like toxic positivity sometimes, like Poppy from Trolls. I feel like more was said here. I can be pessimistic. Yes, I can be insecure. I'm nowhere near those traits now as I was when I was 24, 7 years ago. And 7 years ago was better than I was 7 years before that. So it's all a process of growth. And I do feel like more was said here. I kind of vaguely remember this conversation, and I know how Shaba speaks about it. I'm not going to go back on this blog post to find out, because I really don't care, because I know what I'm like as a person, and I know how Shaba sees me as a person. So it's all good. According to Shaba, Jamie is very reluctant to go anywhere that hasn't been planned, or do anything maybe that hasn't had too much warning. I used to hate spontaneity. Like I used to really struggle with plans changing, and I kind of still do, but it's something I've gotten a lot better with. And a lot of it was to do with anxiety. And like if somebody said last minute, oh we're gonna go like into London or something, I'd be like, oh my god, but I didn't plan. I'm not mentally prepared for this. I've not prepared what I'm gonna eat. What am I gonna do? I'm a lot better now. I can do that. I have grown up. YouTube has seen me through the last years of being a teenager, and for the entirety of my 20s. I am a much more like happy and secure person in my early 30s and in my late 20s as well than I was in my early to mid 20s. I would not want to go back to my early to mid 20s. Not that I was like horribly upset or anything, but just I really love the growth I've had, and like the older I get, the more content and happy I feel in my life. So I don't know, take that and twist it into a reason why I'm not actually trans. The fact that I kind of considered my transition to be like done for me personally 5.5 years ago, and I've only like felt more content and happy since then. All the transphobes going, you're gonna regret this one day, you're gonna regret this one day, and I'm like, I am waiting for that day to happen, and I know it's never gonna come, because the further into this I get, as in life, the happier I am with the decisions I've made that have brought me here. So I do find it very interesting for somebody to take like 7-year-old videos, 9-year-old videos, and base them on to me as a person now. It's an interesting thing to do. Physical appearance and physical health. He's quite tall, 6'1". Yes, and has historically been very skinny. Oh yeah, we had this conversation earlier. He wants to gain weight, but whenever he tries, he can't. Ha, that must be an old video because I definitely can now. And I don't know if it's age or if I just found the formula for myself. I'm not sure. He also always feels very cold. He blames being thin for feeling cold. Darn it, I still feel cold now. But feeling cold could also be due to other health factors. What are you going to diagnose me with now? Being very skinny and very tall pre-transition, Jamie seems to have felt unattractive. Yes, Jamie seems to have felt unattractive. That's not referenced anywhere. I don't remember specifically if I have said that in the 1,000+ videos I've made. I very well could have. It's difficult when you've got gender dysphoria and you're living as a gender you're not to feel in any way attractive, or at least it was for me. Combined with shyness and social anxiety, this made it very difficult for him. They just switched my pronouns. To me, that is like, oh, you've had to make a conscious decision to respect me. And now it's just slipping. Combined with social anxiety, this made it very difficult for him to have self-confidence in his female gender role and sexuality. This is all coming out of their imagination, like their diagnosis. Obviously, if I'm a trans man and I have gender dysphoria, I'm going to feel uncomfortable with being expected to live as a woman and being referred to as such. And in terms of sexuality, I was 17. I was 16 when I figured out I was trans. I was 17 when I started transitioning. Sexuality was all over the place for me. And I'm at a stage now, label it bisexual, don't really care. Honestly, his sexuality blossomed toward a safe person. Oh no, don't. That he was regularly in contact with his best friend, now wife. Shock horror, I did date people before Shaba. Sexuality blossomed towards a safe person. This is so bizarre. I might come across slightly defensive because it comes across like this person is saying that I was only attracted to my wife Shaba and only ended up being with her and marrying her because she was a safe person to me and because I'd had all this sexuality confusion beforehand and I was just like, right, you come here, when that was not the case. Yes, I had sexuality confusion, but just in the sense where I was a teenager trying to figure out myself and who I was in this world. I still had a gauge of who I found attractive. I still dated people pre-Shaba. I also found Shaba attractive before we were friends. And we've shared this a lot. The first time I saw her was in an art class, and my first thought was she's very pretty. It wasn't that the attraction developed whilst being friends, although that is perfectly valid as well. So many couples were friends for years before then taking things further. But for me, I thought Shaba was very beautiful right from the beginning. So yeah, diagnose that. That's today's catchphrase, diagnose that. But even in this relationship, Jamie had a lot of insecurities, he would later say. I was a 17-year-old newly out pre-medical transition trans guy. Of course I had insecurities. It's not anything to make a headline about. I felt inadequate. That was a word that came up a lot in our relationship. I just felt not worthy. Yeah, I also had my new girlfriend as a newly out trans guy who hadn't started his medical transition yet, her entire family calling us lesbians and refusing to see or speak to me. That would lead to you having some negative feelings and feelings of inadequacy. Jamie's diet. What does my diet have to do with this? What the heck is going on? His father noted in a video that he was a picky eater as a child. I was. Picky eating in children is associated with higher child emotional lability, lower child emotional regulation. I don't actually know what the word lability means, and I want to make a fully informed response to this. Lability. Lability refers to the state of being unstable or easily changed, whether in a physical, chemical, or psychological context. I see where this is going. I'm trans because I was a picky eater as a child, which meant that I was emotionally easily changed, right? Is that where they're going to go with this? I actually don't know what picky eating is linked to in childhood, but given their Bem's theory of sexual orientation being a crock of shit, I don't really trust them in their theories, but I will Google it just to confirm. This seems to be like a copy and paste job, except they've missed off high picky eating habits were associated with higher emotional lability, so easily changing emotions, and lower emotional regulation. And picky eating needed to be persistent and all of this stuff. It's also been linked to things like anxiety, depression, and ADHD. Nothing here indicates that it would lead to a child being misdiagnosed as trans. I was a picky eater, but not a, what was this described as? High picky eating. When we're talking about me being a picky eater, it was things like the textures of certain fruits and vegetables. That was it. Like, I didn't need separate meals cooked for me. I ate what the rest of my family ate. I just didn't like things like aubergines and tomatoes and courgettes and mushrooms. We can have a chat about my eating habits for a second if you like. I don't like vegetables that start off crunchier and then go slimy, or just generally are slimy. So like mushrooms are slimy to me. Aubergines are the worst vegetable to ever be discovered. Who the frick ate the first aubergine? And courgettes are in a very similar vein. Tomatoes, I can eat tomatoes if they don't have like the seed bit in the middle. Like if it's like a little tomato salad and it's like little diced tomato bits, that's fine. And the flavor of tomato, fine. Fruits, I do like a lot of fruit, but I don't trust fruit because you could eat the best strawberry in the world and then pick up the next one in the same punnet and it is like gross and it tastes like mushy water. So that's my problem. I have very little trust in fruit being stable. Bananas are okay. I feel like I can trust a banana. Anyway, I wasn't like high picky eating. Jamie still doesn't like vegetables. Yes. He says in one of his videos, I'm having a brain fart on vegetables. Which video? But I've learnt from my mid-20s to now, it is textural. I don't actually have a problem with vegetables themselves. It's a texture thing that is mostly from vegetables. He doesn't drink alcohol, coffee, energy drinks. I have the occasional coffee, but he drinks a lot of Coca-Cola, at least 1 can a day. I do. He's also fond of sweets. Who's not fond of sweets? Okay, I understand not everybody, but like, come on. He states in a video, to me, adulthood is a confusing mix of having a ton of freedom that at first you're not really sure what to do with, and you end up having chocolate for breakfast and dessert for dinner 3 weeks straight. That was just an example. That was a hypothetical example that I've never done. What I have done is have no breakfast and then have breakfast for dinner, like pancakes and eggs and stuff for dinner. Yeah. A diet low in vegetables, high in sugars, while being skinny is known to be detrimental for mental health and surely hasn't helped Jamie's anxiety. Okay. See, the only video I've ever made with my dad, I'm not doing this to be like, haha, you're wrong, and to like defend myself. I'm just really curious about where this person has come from and kind of showing that like, you cannot take a video that I made with my dad in 2016 and be using it as a current point of reference for me as a person. Oh, should I make an updated video with my dad? Does he look older? Oh, the video with my mum is 9 years old. Wow. Oh, my dad does look a little bit older, but not terribly. My diet could be higher in vegetables. It's not high in sugars though. I like sweets. I drink sugar-free everything. So I don't have a particularly high sugar diet. I go through phases. I do, but you know, it's not horrific. Okay, fine. My diet is making my anxiety worse. I really don't buy it. As mentioned previously, Jamie suffered food poisoning, stomach bug, as a child, which left him nauseous, fatigued for years with long-term food anxiety. Could it also have left him with food intolerances, which manifested as mental health symptoms? This is very common according to research and clinical ecologists. No. I just find this very bizarre. I didn't realise how odd I would find it to read something like this about myself. That somebody's dissected so much of so many videos across such a long period of time and so far has tried to say like gender dysphoria is caused by this, mental health issues caused by my eating habits. Like, oh, what? It's like they've created a little narrative in their brain. I've gone on a nice little journey in Wonderland about me. Hypermobility, putting me and the words hypermobility in the same sentence. Very no. He says, I can fold my ear into my ear like that. I can. But then I got like a scaffold piercing and it ruined it. When I was a kid, I used to do that and then it would stay there. It doesn't do it anymore since I'm an adult. It used to be a comfort thing I did as a child. Like I would just do that. I don't know why. This is probably definitely oversharing. And I still do it now. I find myself doing it occasionally out in public and I'm like, that's interesting. I didn't notice. Does he have hypermobility? Because I can fold my ear into my ear. That seems like a very limited range of potential symptoms to diagnose someone as being hypermobile. According to Dr. Mosser from Gender Confirmation Center, there's a very high number of hypermobility syndromes among patients who come for top surgery, and he wonders if collagen disorders have something to do with gender dysphoria. Correlation does not mean causation. This is referenced Good job. I can't find information about this. It's not something I've ever heard about, but does just again read like where people say, oh, there's a higher prevalence of autism in trans people, therefore autism makes people think they're trans, and people who are autistic can't know themselves, and it's just the biggest pile of shit. So we move on. A similar observation has Dr. Will Powers, who notes there is a statistically anomalous amount of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, hypermobility spectrum disorder in my MTF community. I literally can't ignore it anymore. Just because there is a correlation or a slightly increased chance of one community having a certain something, it doesn't mean that there's a causation going on. Neither of these people seem to have claimed, and I'm sure that this person writing the blog post would have made it bold front and center if there had been any claims that these increased instances of hypermobility were believed to lead people to be trans. That's not what's going on here. It's just a note of like, oh, there does seem to be a prevalence of hypermobility among trans people that is somewhat higher than cis people. I don't really see it meaning anything more than that. Anyway, Jamie mentions feeling pain when sitting due to being very skinny, but it can also be due to other issues, including hypermobility. I'm tired at this point. The role of Shaba in Jamie's transition. Don't even go there. I don't know where this person's gonna go, but the amount of transphobes who go down the route of
Shaba identified as straight as a teenager, and Jamie was attracted to her, so he transitioned so that they could be together.
I would have transitioned whether I knew Shaba or not. The timeline goes like this. I see Shaba for the first time when we're 16, pre-transition. Found her pretty. Did not speak, see each other for a little while, and then accidentally met up through a mutual friend. Became close friends. Just friends, right? I had no like, oh my god, I need to be with this person. I then come out and begin my transition, and from then something develops between Shaba and I quite naturally. There was no like, oh my god, she won't date me unless I'm a boy. Imagine, oh my god, and I've kept it up for 14 years. Jamie and Shaba met at college when they were 16 and became best friends. Their relationship became sexual. Weird. Several months after Jamie told Shaba about the plan to transition, and 2 months before Jamie began testosterone. Shaba at the time identified as straight. Yes, she did at the time. Okay. Oh, this is Shaba's quote. At the time, I identified entirely straight. I never even saw pre-Jamie as anything but a really good friend, like I never saw her as pursuing anything romantically. It's only when I saw Jamie as a guy after he came out, and when I don't know, things just sort of naturally progressed into us doing sort of flirty things that then meant something different. Yeah. Cool. Jamie instead identified as a lesbian, he says. I had previously come out to my parents as a lesbian. Nothing wrong with being a lesbian. It is something I personally feel uncomfortable about because I am a man. Yeah. I was just wrong about myself on so many levels with that one. But anyway, I had done that and both my parents had reacted very positively and didn't have an issue with it. True. At some point during their relationship when Jamie outed it to friends, Shaba felt embarrassed and wanted to end it but had a change of heart upon Jamie's insistence. Note that this part is not referenced. This did not happen. This is living in this person's little fantasy world. Shaba did not feel embarrassed when our friends found out. We only kept it private from friends so that like wider people wouldn't find out and it wouldn't get back to Shaba's family so that she could avoid being disowned, which then later happened because they did find out eventually. There was no change of heart, but we did have a deep conversation, a very difficult conversation about whether the fallout from her family for both of us in terms of like transphobia that I was going to have to deal with and Shaba then having to deal with the fallout within her own family home. We had a conversation about if we felt like the relationship was worth continuing despite the risks in terms of that. But this is very uncomfortable and inaccurate wording because it makes it sound like I persuaded Shaba back into a relationship she didn't want to be in. Like, you can't do that. No, there is a reason why this one does not have a little reference number. Jamie, being in love with Shaba, knowing that she was straight, could only win her love by transitioning. Therefore, their relationship further cemented the resolve of Jamie to transition. No, it didn't. They went there. They actually went there. I wasn't in love with Shaba before we got together. I loved her as a friend. And then after I came out, things did start to develop that was a kind of surprise for both of us there. The amount of TERFs I have seen believe this about our relationship, they are absolutely living on another planet. It would be fascinating if it weren't so uncomfortable. But when Jamie and Shaba went to the school administration to tell them about the transition, Jamie was shy and felt what is it with the inconsistency of pronoun usage here? Like, I mean, they're quite a lot of the time they just use my name. rather than I've never read my name so many times. Shaba practically held his hand and shoved him through the door. Yeah. Quote, I was so nervous about going and speaking to this person about it that I felt like I couldn't go. I felt like I couldn't step through that door and tell them. I was really struggling with it. So Shaba literally had to march me there and push me through the door and sit in the appointment with me to make sure it all went okay. Recounted again in another video. Recounted, there should be a pronoun or a name there. Who recounted this? Oh, is that why they say the transition? Interesting. So yeah. I was very nervous. I was literally going and coming out to my college and asking them if they could change my name and stuff. It's a scary thing to do. Coming out is scary. It's very normal to have a friend's support. This was also before we were together. Like Shaba was my best friend still at this point, and only my best friend. She's still my best friend now, but also my wife, you know? I don't see what this has to do with it. Shaba was the first person to get the new name and pronouns right consistently. She was ecstatic. You tricked me into misgendering myself because the pronoun was put at the beginning of the sentence and I thought that you were talking about Shaba. Thanks. He was ecstatic after the top surgery, according to him, also due to aesthetics. What? Ecstatic after top surgery, according to him, also due to aesthetics. I read that as anesthetics. They definitely did not make me feel ecstatic. Felt very unwell. Hashtag emetophobia triggered. Obviously, I was happy after top surgery. It alleviated a lot of gender dysphoria for me, and I was happy with the aesthetic appearance of my chest being flat. Okay. In an early video to the question on how she defines her sexuality, Shaba responded, I am straight. I was always straight and I will always be straight for the foreseeable future, and Jamie is also straight. This, I feel, must have been quite an old video. It's their 23rd citation, because I remember when Shaba and I told each other, I don't think I'm straight. I think bearing in mind we got together at 17, no regrets over that. But Shaba came from a very strict family that didn't accept LGBT plus stuff, and so wasn't exposed to that very much and hadn't really, I don't think, thought an incredible amount about things. And then I was dealing with being trans. I think it can be really confusing. I don't know what it's like now in school for teenagers and stuff, but as like a 15, 16, 17-year-old, part of me was like, oh, well, I'm attracted to girls, definitely. And because I'm more like masc, everyone just assumes I'm a lesbian and is telling me I'm a lesbian, so I must be. And then I think there can be this thing of like, oh, well, I'm attracted to this gender and this is the kind of vision people have for me, and not really thinking about it. And then we got in a relationship and it doesn't impact our relationship, but it's something that we both realized a little bit after we got together. But it was a really long time ago, because it was in the first place that we lived together and we haven't lived there since 2017. I don't think it was that. So we were 22 at the oldest when this happened, which is 9 years ago. So yeah, I think let's normalize people discovering themselves. They look at each other happily, but in later videos they declare themselves to have been bisexuals, to be and have been bisexuals. Jamie even mentioned several male celebrities as crushes. Yes, he could have become openly bisexual due to increased libido under the effect of testosterone. I'm intrigued. They just feel like they have a reason for everything happening other than that's just what happened. It's
he is now bisexual because of testosterone.
If they'd really paid attention to my videos, they'd have known that actually I first thought of myself and identified and actually told a few friends when I was 14, 15 that I thought I might be bisexual. And then when I went back to school and stuff, I dated this guy for a short time and I was like, I don't really like this. And then it turned out I just didn't like him, but because I didn't like that, and I was people assumed I was a lesbian. I was I must be a lesbian then because I didn't like this one guy. Yeah, sexuality is a funny one. The role of social contagion in Jamie's transition. This just keeps getting better. Jamie says, I was 17 and by this point I'd known I was trans for about a year-ish. It was just a bit under a year. I'd watched a documentary. Bing, bold moment. This feels cut up. This isn't reading in a structure that I feel I would have spoken in. I'd watch a documentary. Bing, bold moment. Oh my god, I'm trans. Frantically researching, obsessively watching other people on YouTube, and I knew I was trans at this point. Yes. Would he have been so sure of his plan if he had watched stories of detransitioners or read critical research? Would he have been so sure of his transness if he'd been brainwashed and manipulated by transphobes? I probably would have ended up hating myself a lot and being really miserable and repressing a massive part of my identity and being like, no, I can't be because the TERFs have manipulated me, because that's what happens. I'm sorry. Like, you see it a lot in certain other communities who really don't accept LGBT plus people, where people like know that they're LGBT plus and they're like, no, I cannot be this thing because my like world that I live in has told me I can't be. So I'm really happy I did not come across transphobes, because like critical research, there's no critical research. It's bullshit. Critical research is just philosophical rantings of transphobes talking out their asses. Okay? Being trans isn't a social contagion. Rapid onset gender dysphoria isn't a thing. And what's missed in this sentence that for the longest time that I can remember is the type of phrasing I've used. And that's why I'm saying I wonder if this is cut up, because one, it doesn't read in a structure that I would speak in, but it also is missing a really big point that I pretty much always say. So unless this is a very old video, how I describe it is I came across a documentary which taught me that trans was a thing. Before I was 16, I didn't know that trans was a thing somebody could be. Watching that documentary gave me the language to describe how I'd always been feeling. It didn't tell me who I was. It didn't influence me into being that thing. It was literally like, oh my God, I feel like that. I have always felt like that, and I didn't know what it was called. It's called being trans. No influence going on there. And then I went down a rabbit hole of watching other people on YouTube to know what to do, because I had no clue. I was like, well, I'm trans. What does one do with this information of being trans? Who do I speak to? Where do I go? Because I want to live my life as who I really am, and I don't know what the first step is to do that. So that's why I started researching and looking into what to do. It wasn't researching like, am I actually trans, or like trying to be convinced into it by other people. I think transphobes have a very warped perception of the trans community, and it really tells. Anyway, coming across the critical research and detransitioners would not have stopped me from being trans. It might have delayed me coming out and transitioning, but that would have just made me feel worse about myself for longer. So I'm very glad that I didn't come across that shit. How come Jamie is such a confident person after transition? Jamie is much happier, self-confident after transition, and credits transition itself for this U-turn. Funny that when you don't have to deal with horrible gender dysphoria and you go through a process that is known to alleviate gender dysphoria and anxiety and general like negative feelings, that you would then feel happier. Oh my God. But it could as well have been at least partially a medical effect of the testosterone he is taking. I can see the knots this person has tied themselves in to try and find any reason for me to be trans other than the fact that some people are just trans. Okay, testosterone is known as a male hormone, but it is produced by the ovaries as well, and it is an important hormone for libido in women. Low testosterone in women can cause depression, anxiety. Therefore, increasing testosterone to normal levels can improve the mental and sexual health of women. Every blood test I had pre-starting testosterone, my testosterone levels were very like typical to like higher end typical. Like I didn't have low testosterone for my assigned birth sex, for like what you would expect pre-starting testosterone. Increasing testosterone further to male levels could decrease the increased risk for depressive and anxiety disorders that is associated with being a woman, as well as greatly increased confidence. I don't think that's to do with testosterone. That's not referenced. Like, what kind of statement is that? That just feels like, oh, women are oppressed more in society and struggle with that. I mean, like, lower testosterone in cis men has been linked to increased depression in those cis men. I cannot find any information that suggests that the fact that cis women naturally have lower testosterone levels means they're more likely to be depressed. That's not a connection I've ever heard of. But testosterone also increases irritability, aggressiveness. Jamie is more snappy, struggles more than before to pick up people's emotions. That's referenced. I don't remember saying that. I've always been a slightly irritable person. I couldn't comment on if I said that. Nothing about that has been put in quotes. I don't know if I struggle more to pick up on people's emotions. Also, in his later videos, he speaks on maximum speed, 200 words per minute, as if hypomanic. Could this be an effect of testosterone? What is wrong with this person? I speak fast? Is that what they're saying? I mean, I have Glaswegian parents who speak very quickly, so I'd be surprised if I didn't speak reasonably fast, but I don't think I speak like significantly fast. I'm super intrigued by the fact that this person has taken the time out to measure how many words I speak per minute. And also, you're doing this from videos where it's me, but I'm like performing. I'm making content. This is my job. I talk about things, like I have things to say. Some of my videos are scripted and they're also edited together. So you could take a minute of footage that I've made, but I'll have cut out breaks where I literally had a break from cut out and breaks, which I could leave in this video so you can see. I'll have cut out breaks. But if I feel like a break is so long that it would mean it's a bit boring to watch, and it's happening quite a lot because I do take breaks in my speech, then you're not going to know that if you're watching an edited video of me. I don't think this was the best experiment to run. But yeah, because I speak fast, apparently they're questioning if I could be hypomanic. Jamie's more gender confident also because adolescence is over. Gender anxiety is common during adolescence since it is a crucial period for the formation of gender identity. Once adolescence is over, anxiety can move away from gender to other areas of current concern for that age: wedding, career, children, death, as it happened with Jamie. Terrified of death. And children. No, I'm kidding. I feel like some of their paragraphs lead to a very bizarre conclusion, and then a lot of the paragraphs lead to nothing. So adolescence is quite a crucial time period in our lives anyway for certain things. I mean, we have like critical periods throughout our life for certain developmental milestones. Are they saying that had I waited until adolescence was over, I wouldn't have transitioned because I wouldn't have been concerned over my gender because I'd have had other things to think about, like weddings and careers? I very much disagree with that. This person is exhausting. Okay, we're on to the final paragraph. We're nearly there, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking with me. In summary, Jamie's transition is not a story of success. Seeing as it's my transition in my life, I feel like I can have the ultimate say over whether it was successful or not, and I say it was. Because today Jamie is injecting synthetic hormones. I'm actually on Testosterone. I don't inject them. And those synthetic hormones were actually designed for like cis men with low testosterone, so you're going to tell them off for taking it as well. With potential side effects. What? The side effects that they concern and like monitor are things like your cholesterol level, because having higher testosterone can lead you to an increased risk of having higher cholesterol, as cis men are at risk of too. So like the potential side effects are all things that cis men will deal with, and potential side effects that are specific to trans masc people taking testosterone. The one that's coming to mind at the minute is things like atrophy in the genital area, but it's something that can happen to cis women too, and can often happen to cis women during things like menopause. So okay, cool, and it's a very treatable thing. Transphobes sometimes talk about, especially like trans masc people taking testosterone, as if it's this big bad dangerous thing, and it's like, oh my god, all those side effects, like, oh wow, the horror, my deep voice and my beard. Oh no, I'm devastated. Can't have biological children. Actually, I can. Like, there used to be this big myth that taking testosterone would just like make you completely infertile. Like when I was starting tea, I was told like you gotta freeze your eggs because you won't be able to use them. But so many trans guys come off testosterone and get pregnant or freeze their eggs or do something with them or whatever, and like they're not infertile. It's actually not super likely that taking testosterone is gonna make you like totally infertile. If you want to go through any fertility treatments or have biological children yourself and like carry them or use your eggs in IVF, you will need to come off testosterone and have your cycle restart. It doesn't make you infertile. If I wanted to have biological children myself, like use my eggs, I could if I wanted to. And his mental and physical health issues. Wait, what? Can't have biological children and his mental and physical health issues. So I also can't have my mental and physical health issues. What does that mean? I feel like that is poor sentence structure. Let me pretend. And his mental and physical health issues that in my opinion were the starting point for his transition are either still there or have resolved but could have been addressed differently with less harm on his physical health. There's been no harm to my physical health. There has been no harm to my physical health. You are making some very broad stretches. This person is very bizarre. So in their opinion? Their transphobic opinion? Their gender critical opinion? Their
being trans is an ideology, social contagion opinion.
So their bullshit opinion basically is at the starting point of my transition were my anxiety and the fact I had chronic fatigue syndrome. Oh, and that I'm a picky eater and that I talk fast and that I am married to a woman who for a few years of our relationship identified as straight. Which one is it? Or is it all of the above? Was I just destined to be dragged into this trans life? They are separate to me being trans, and I am trans regardless of them. Yep. Okay, this was weird. this person is very weird. And then there's like this big long list of like my YouTube videos. One of the references is a Reddit post. That's one of the doctors. Okay, sure. Give me a scientific paper and I might take it seriously. Unlikely though. So yes, that was the video. How did we find that? How very bizarre. Moral of the story, don't be transphobic. Other moral of the story, please don't diagnose strangers on the internet and dissect their lives and the snippets of videos that you see on them and think that you know them and start saying things like this person is hypermobile, hypomanic, and transitioned because they had chronic fatigue syndrome and they wanted to be with Shaba. Pick a reason and stick with it and actually try and come up with something compelling. Not that you'll be able to. Anyway, that was the video. Thank you for watching. Think about getting a thumbs up and subscribing if you want to, but no pressure. And yeah, as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Much love. Bye. Yay.